Aloha and welcome to A Word with Ward. I'm Representative Gene Ward and we're broadcasting from the Hawaii State Capitol, 4th floor, and we're bringing you more of community leadership and what leadership can do in the community, particularly for very, very important places like Hanauma Bay. I'm honored to have the President and Vice President of Friends of Hanauma Bay, Mr. Sid McWhirter. Sid, welcome.
Thank you, Gene. I appreciate you having us here.
And Bob, we appreciate you being here and all the work that you two have done as volunteers. I know they pay you really a lot of money for doing what you do.
But the view is good.
Yes.
And yeah, the fringe benefits are good. Let's start with a little bit of a background. First to you and then the Friends of Hanauma Bay. Sid, what's your background? I met you first actually, even though it was at the neighborhood board, I met you initially at Home Depot, but you had a life before that even.
Oh, yeah.
Tell us a little bit about yourself so people will know, who are we talking about, these Friends of Hanauma Bay?
Well, my background is high-tech manufacturing. I started making diodes and transistors back in the early 60s. Spent 8 years in Silicon Valley. Worked on in the early days of liquid crystal displays. Manufactured liquid crystal display watches. Ran Spiedel's digital watch operation in Kansas City. Went to Boeing in Seattle, and then had my own companies for about 15 years. Then,
and you fell in love with Hawaii and...
Oh, along the way, both me and my late wife did, and that when I finally said I had enough, sold off the companies and been in Hawaii for 4 years now.
Well, I know in those 4 years you guys have done a lot. Bob, give us a bit of an overview of your background. Bob Kern, the Vice President of the Friends of Hanauma Bay.
Oh, thanks for having us today. Well, my professional background and training is as a mental health counselor, and I spent
That's
a lot
good
of
for
my...
Hanauma Bay.
Yes,
Well, it's good for me.
I wish somebody would keep me in mind. And we lived in Washington, D.C. area for a long time, and my wife and I had about enough of the East Coast, and we found our way out. We were into scuba diving, and we became instructors, and our first jobs were at Hanauma Bay. We were brought out to work for the concessionaire there, who used to lead snuba tours, which was real nice. So
was Alan Hong there at the time?
Not quite yet.
That was even
he
precedes
became
him.
the director shortly after that. But we worked for the concessionaire, not for the city. That didn't exactly work out as we had planned it, so we went back to our former professions, me being a mental health counselor, but continued to stay connected to Hanauma Bay for recreation, and we tried to start our own scuba instruction business, and we took people there, and then became more and more involved. I was invited to be on the committee that developed the Kern education program there, which led to me being invited to be on the board of the Friends, and I did that for a number of years, and then kind of freelanced on my own, and then came back on the board last year. So I've been connected with Hanauma Bay ever since I've been here, which is 25 years.
Well, before we get into Friends, thank you two for all that you've done and will be doing, because I see you guys every week or every month at the neighborhood board, particularly Bob, yourself coming and showing, and then you come to the mic and really give up. You've really kept the community informed, and this is just another way of, would you say, broadcasting, if you will, some of the things that have been pointedly brought up for how many years now? You have been 20 some years that it's been. But let's go back to the beginning. Before the show, I was reading that in the beginning, Hanauma Bay was Bishop Estate Kamehameha Schools, and then they ceded it over to the government, and it became a park and rec, city and county. And then, as I would follow the history with Dick Baker, I guess all of our good friends, he said they were up to almost 2 million or so visitors.
10,000 a day.
10,000 a day. Feeding the fish, stomping on the coral.
Yep.
10,000 a day. And then it was like, okay guys, time out. It's time to get a bit serious about preserving Hanauma Bay. And some of the things that they put in, you said you were originally in the training of what now the visitor has to go through? Bob, did you say that?
Of the current program. Hanauma Bay was made a nature preserve in 1967. But it wasn't really until 1990 that they started an education program there, and that's when the first management plan was written, and
So
that included education.
Even as a nature preserve, you could throw peas and bread and all that.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
You could do it. It was a nature preserve in name.
In name,
than by
still is,
practice.
I think, in some ways, unfortunately. But
Who started the Friends?
That's a good question. I'm not sure.
I know Dick Baker was
if
the
it was
first
Dick, was it?
president.
Okay, so he was
Yeah.
probably one of the original founders
Yes.
then, with a number of other people in the Hawaii Kai area.
Yeah, but the Friends became the city's appointed adopter of the Bay,
Hmm.
and as such stewards of the Bay, and so.
But you're a 501c3. You're
Yeah.
not any way associated as city employees.
No.
obviously.
No, in fact, one of them, there have been misunderstandings over the years about that. The Friends of Hanauma Bay do not run Hanauma Bay. And also because we are a volunteer organization, some people think that we run the volunteer program there, but that is not true.
Mm.
The volunteers at the Bay work for the Hanauma Bay Education Program, which comes out of Sea Grant.
And they're not under you guys.
No.
No.
No, and that's been some confusing information over time that needs to be
For
understood.
those who are in the audience who haven't been to Hanauma Bay recently, what are some of the prerequisites for visitors versus local Kama'aina individuals?
Well,
Sid,
the
what-
locals, all they have to do is pay $1 to get into park, or take a bus in,
Mhm.
and they're free to get through, but they still must go through the educational video.
And how long is the video?
It runs about 7 to 8 minutes, so figure about 15 minutes, load up the theater, show them, get them on their way.
A couple of YouTubes and they're out. So
Yes.
$1 to get to park, and then what's the entrance fee for
There-
locals?
locals,
no,
nothing.
Still nothing, and that's been tested in court, right?
That is correct.
There's no way that that's otherwise. If you're a visitor, you pay how much?
$7.50 for the adults. I'm not sure what the kids are 5.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
But
Okay.
anyway, it's $7.50. They take in about $800,000 a year with entry fees alone. That they last numbers I saw were running about $800,000 a year through the Bay. People, we are closed on Tuesdays, so you figure out it's close
Except when
to
the president is in town. I understand that President Obama has all the Tuesdays for the next couple of years. Or
That
he's
is
had the
correct.
last few or 3 or
Yes.
4 years anyways, right?
He's had a couple.
I learned Hanauma Bay on Tuesday when the president is in town is...
But
is-
think of
is-
the Friends. What the mayor has gone out on the other parks, and understand Hanauma Bay is not a park. That
It's a nature
preserve.
preserve.
Right.
Not aquatic, not marine, just nature
Right.
preserve.
And what the mayor wanted was the community around the parks to adopt the park and take care of it. And we are doing exactly that
Mm.
with some effort that we think are making some progress.
So before we get into some of the difficulties that have been experienced at the Bay, what is the specific kuleana then of the Friends of Hanauma Bay? You said you're to take care of it. How is that implemented? Being that the employees are not under you, but do you kind of act as a board of advisors?
Well, we
or-
have a board of directors. There's 8 of us on the board currently.
Mhm.
That half of us are volunteers at the Bay.
Mhm.
That Bob and I spend one afternoon a week. He spends a couple of days along with his wife, who's also on the board.
And what would you do there while you're volunteer?
We'd rotate through. We would greet the visitors when they come in and help them get to the theater. We would also show the video, and then we would be on the beach answering questions that the people would have about what they saw in the water, the different types of fish. And that gets us into another area of concern. But anyway, we try to help them as much as we can.
And that is now for the last decade. How many years has Friends been active? You said
Since
19?
91.
91. Okay, so there is a track record.
Mhm.
There
And-
is now, from the 10,000 you said per day
Yeah, we go
before,
down
what is it now?
about 3,000.
3,000.
They did a study on the reef where they after they made all the changes, got rid of the feeding and everything else, they literally chained off an area on the reef, and they looked at the growth of the coral there versus where the people were allowed to go and snorkel. And what they found was that if nobody was there, the reef would recover twice as fast. But half as fast, and the fact that it was getting healthy, that's why they set up specifically the theater is the metering point for the number of people that could go to the bay. There's a limit of 125 people every 15 minutes or 500 per hour. So the goal is never to have more than 2,000 people on the beach at one time as they cycle through. In other words, they'll go to the beach for a couple hours, then leave, and you have your other people that are coming down. And this has been historically what has been happening, that the idea of metering the people was absolutely ingenious. And Alan Hong went a long way to helping that all get set up.
Call Alan the mayor of Hanauma Bay.
Oh, yes.
Now retired Alan Hong, but a man who put his heart and soul in his
was,
career.
He was awesome. And the Friends, along with the city and everything else, we helped get to the point where they built the facility that exists there today, which is all blended into the natural environment, that if you're on the beach and look up, you can't see buildings, that it's actually outside simulated rock face with growth of plants and such. And they just did a marvelous job.
You know who the architect was for that?
Nope.
Group 7.
Group 70,
Okay.
Francis
Group
Oda.
70.
Exactly. You look at it, you don't know the buildings there. And by the way, some of us wanted to have the convention center at the Alawai under a huge mound, so you could have a convention center and you could tee off and go over and around the Alawai golf course and not even know that there was a convention center. The same way that Group 70 did in Hanauma Bay. It was ingenious, exactly.
Yeah.
And it was so
beautiful.
well done that those of us who have been there for a while know where the faux rock starts and the real rock come together. And you can ask people which of this is real and which of this is the faux rock, and you can't tell.
Only you guys know.
That's how good a
Inside.
job they did.
When we talked about limiting from 10,000 a day down to 3,000, for those, including my wife, who have tried to get into the bay and their car is stopped, and sometimes aggressively saying, not literally get out of here, but you cannot come in here. Isn't it a rule of thumb that if you don't get there by 9:30, 10 o'clock, you're not going to get in the bay?
Probably.
And that's where a lot of local people are very frustrated.
Right.
Yeah, it is frustrating, and the earlier the better, especially now in the summer. A couple days this year, I know they've closed the parking lot at about 8:30 because so
Even
many people
8:30.
wanted to get in. But that's summertime, generally not as bad outside of summer hours. But you know, when the security guys that work up at the top there, they've got a really hard job because you know, people come up and they want to come in, and there are people, there are visitors, you know, and they're more than frustrated. And you have people just driving right through the cones and trying to drive right past these people. You have folks that want to argue. You have folks that want to know, well, how many cars are going to pull out, you know, and they're not going to be told. And those guys have a real tough job up there to try and keep traffic moving and keep it going on the road so that you don't back up all the way down into Hawaii Kai. So, you know, if you have to be careful about complaining about them. They're not all perfect, but they've got a really,
So
really
for those
hard
of you
job.
who are frustrated with the guards who didn't let you in the last time you were there, this looks like it's a very big problem. But it's when it's such high demand and you've got a limit. It's almost like Disneyland. You get so many people, so many per minute, so many per hour, and you've got a carrying capacity, and you can't go beyond that.
The thing you don't want to do then is go on Wednesdays after it's
okay.
been closed on Tuesdays.
Did everybody hear that?
And
Wednesday, be careful. That's the worst day to go then. What's
Yeah.
the best day to go? If there
Maybe-
Wednesday's the best, it gets better from there on.
well, I think Thursday, Friday, and Monday are pretty much even from the numbers I've seen, but I know Wednesday is the worst.
Because
The
of
worst.
big closed.
And the worst day of the year is the day after Christmas.
I thought people went shopping on the day after Christmas.
No?
Speaking of gifts and speaking of closures and things, I want to go because the time has gone so quickly. I want to get into really the core of what the Friends have been doing and what some of the problems are and some of the things that people perhaps see and say, why are you guys neglecting this beautiful nature preserve? Sid, you've kind of been the numbers guy. You want to give a broad overview of what's going on, and then Bob can maybe show us some of the specific problem areas with some slides that have been brought.
The number one problem that Parks and Recreation, who administers Hanauma Bay, have never separated it out for what it is, a nature preserve. Historically, if you look back, it's been treated just like a park. Hanauma Bay is extremely unique on this island. It is the only public facility that is totally self-sufficient financially.
And by statute? By regulation? By...
Well, it ended up by court order. That the City Council, I think it was 1995, passed an ordinance regarding Hanauma Bay and how the funds were to be dispersed and what the main objectives of the fund was to be.
For Hanauma Bay
For
only.
Hanauma Bay only.
That's something that people need to know, that the funds that it generates were for the Bay and the Bay only.
Right. And so there was 4 sections. One dealt with the maintenance and operation, one dealt with education, one dealt with a reef study, which was the health of the reef that was supposed to be measured every year. And the 4th item was anything that's left over could be spent on the adjacent beaches or parks.
You mean like down the street to Mauna Loa Bay?
Sandy Beach,
Or
down,
okay.
down through Mauna Loa.
Okay, I get it.
Well, in 2002, there was a court case, Daly versus Harris. It was 2 ladies from California at the behest of their daughter who lived here. And attorney James Bickerton was representing them, that they did not want to have to pay to get to Hanauma Bay.
To get in.
To get in. So they filed a federal lawsuit. And
For $7.50, they made a loss?
No, then it was $3.
For $3, they made a federal lawsuit. Okay.
And
that's the American way. Yeah?
The object was to stop the development of the bay because the entry fee was going to be used for the building of the visitor center, the educational center, and the facilities on the beach. Well, in 2002, Judge Kay ruled in favor of the city, that it's okay to have an entry fee and everything else, and that everything was fine until the last 11 pages of the court order. And he said, oh, by the way, the money that you are taking from the fund to support the outer beaches is an unauthorized tax and is illegal, and you must repay $3.166 million.
Wow.
Which the city ultimately did. So now you had it very clear. The city tried to fight the point, well, what about the concession money? Can't we subtract that from the $3.166 million? And he said no, because that was by council action that it was to be part of the fund, so forget about it. So that all went well. But what we have found in the research of the numbers, with knowledge and forethought, the budgeting process for Hanauma Bay and the adjacent parks never changed. They dropped Cocoa Head out of it, but from Sandy Beach all the way through Mauna Loa was in one budget. So I spent a couple of days down at the city last summer going through the books and talking to the gentleman that I was working with there. And I said, do you see where the Bay was ever repaid for the labor that went through this budget? Because I can't find anything. And he says, neither can I.
So somebody works at Sandy Beach or Mauna Loa Bay and they get paid out of Hanauma Bay monies.
That's right.
And
That's what
that's
has-
what the judge said you cannot do.
That is correct.
Okay.
So through a series of steps for the fiscal year 2014, we were able to do a comparison to find out, is this really true? So from Parks and Rec, I got a list of all the employees that worked at all the beaches and everybody that was in that budget. Then mysteriously, I got a list of all the salaries for those positions, added them all up, and looked at what the previous year was, and there was essentially no difference. I was within $4,000, which showed no money had ever been repaid to the Bay, and it was over $300,000.
Sid, in a way, it's good that we got a cash cow because of all of our beaches need something. But there are some needs at Hanauma Bay that we're going to run out of time if we don't show some of those slides. Some of the
Yes.
things that the monies didn't go to. Bob, you got a few slides that you're going to show that
Yeah.
say, you know, okay, there's the money, but here's some of the things that should have been repaired and they haven't been.
And this is not only just a matter of the money was not used properly, this is also a matter of the money was not used. There's always been plenty of money in the fund. It just hasn't been used for what it is intended for. You can put up picture number 2. I think this is one of the most descriptive pictures of how things are ignored. It's a beach desk, the education kiosk under which the volunteers sit, and it documents the 6 years that it remained unrepaired. And the only reason that it was fixed ultimately in 2014 is because we showed these pictures, and people saw that, and they said, oh, well, now we have to do something. And also reminding them that there is a court order saying that, you know, the money is supposed to be used for this.
So there was money in the Treasury to do that.
Yes.
And you brought it to their attention in 2009, and it took until 2014 to get it fixed.
Yeah.
Why? I mean, if the money's there, isn't there someone who says we can tap into the money and fix it?
Well,
That's a no. I mean, the roof wasn't
Nobody-
rocket science.
Nobody ever asked the question. The money was sitting there. Now, the city was earning interest off of that money, but it was going into the general fund.
That's a huge.
I think it was a cash flow issue within the city, because at one point, you know how they're going through now and fixing all of these parks and going in and micro-coating the bathrooms to make them easier to clean. Well, we had 3 bathrooms, and they went through, they had 1 done, they had 2 done, they stripped the 3rd one and then said, there's no money, stop. That was years ago. No one ever came back, and when we checked the numbers, there was $3 million in our account.
Does Bob have a slide of one of those bathrooms or one of the things that?
well, slide
roof?
number 9 shows what it looks like inside the ladies' rooms on the beach. I had permission, and it was clear when I went in there to take these pictures.
Let's hope so.
But you notice there's no soap dispenser, there's no paper towels, there's no mirrors, and up in the right corner is how the toilet paper dispensers are held together. And it's been like that for a long time. And in my mind, it reflects an attitude on the part of the Parks Department about the place, about how they don't see it as different from any other park, and it very much is. Hanauma Bay is very much of a customer service oriented place, and I don't think people in the city fully understand that.
I mean, this is a world-renowned place, right?
It's a
There's
world-renowned place.
unique in the world.
Well, and it's referred to as the jewel of Hawaii, and you know, you could just run through these pictures.
Throw
and look at-
throw up another one.
Okay, well, let's look at number, how about number 3? This is an educational board that's halfway down the road to the beach, and it was starting to fall apart. And then my understanding is the wind blew the covering off of that, and that's been 6 months. And it'll probably be that way, I don't know how long. Picture number 7 is one that's particularly annoying to, I know, to Sid and I and other members of the Friends. It's the lights.
Looks like a drone. No, it's not a
Yeah,
drone.
well, they've been out now for 3 years, but there used to be the Thursday evening education program, which is very, very popular. And
That's a solar light, right?
yeah, right.
And it went out.
And they went out, and they were out for 2 years.
That's the parking lot in front of the
Right.
entrance, correct?
Yes.
So when we mentioned that the lights being out could be a safety hazard, they canceled the Thursday evening program.
How much money was in the till at that time for those lights, and how much?
Almost
were
4 million.
Almost 4 million, and how much would the lights cost, Bob?
It's certainly not that much.
100,000.
Yeah.
I had a quote to.
So, gentlemen, we are running short of time, and you guys are probably running short of patience, seeing a lot of money and a lot of neglect. Where do we go from here? What's the latest status as of 2015 in the summer? We're in August now.
Okay, we are in discussions with Paul Alston, the attorney, looking at what legal remedies we could go to get this thing fixed permanently. The city has made changes, but they won't allow us to go in and verify the changes. You know, this is a lot like everybody's complaining about Iran and nuclear thing, and they want to do it their way, but no, you don't get to check.
So trust but don't verify.
Yes, and we have for some reason, a history that we maybe don't feel good about that.
So does that mean you guys are going to go to court, or
We don't
you're
know.
in negotiations
Yeah,
now to
hope
see?
not.
Let's be a little bit more transparent. Because if the judge ruled that, look, this is money that only goes into Hanauma Bay, that seems to be a no-brainer, actually.
No, it
That
will
would be easy to train.
We've tried. I've been trying to get the city to sit down and negotiate in good faith. Their thing is, oh, that's back. Let's worry about forward and not worry about that. Oh, we did so many different things to help the Bay and didn't charge you, and I don't
On
see
that
that.
said, and Bob, let's end on a positive note. With all the money in the Bay, what are some of the visions to apply those funds to in the future to even make it even better as a visitor experience?
Well, once the Bay is where it's supposed to be maintenance-wise, one of the gentlemen, Kaipo Perez, who works at the Bay, came up with a suggestion that the private schools have the money and they bring their students to the Bay. The public schools don't have the money for the buses. We could take money out of the fund, pay for all of the locals to come to the Bay to learn about the ecology of the island. And it isn't that much money.
And the judge would allow use of funds to do that kind of stuff.
That's part of the education program.
Gentlemen, we've run out of time. Unless, Bob, you've got a closing comment of about 3 seconds.
Well, I think what's really going to be required is an attitude change on the part of the Parks Department and others in the city. They are going to have to recognize this place as a special, unique place that requires different care and different handling than the other parks. It is not a park, it's a nature preserve. And I think at the bottom line, unless that attitude changes, we're going to see a repeat of the history of neglect that has been going on for 20 years.
Gentlemen, the bottom line is I, on behalf of the community, are very grateful for what you're doing. You're keeping government honest and transparent. You're keeping a fund that is supposed to be in the public's hand alive. And on that basis, thank you so much for what you're doing, and I'll see you in the neighborhood board as we push this ball down the road even further and keep that gem that is a natural treasure as the best in the world that we've got. Thank you for viewing. This is Representative Gene Ward. Thank you for viewing A Word for Ward. We'll see you again. Aloha.